Hello, my name is Alex, and I'm 27 years old. A few months ago, I moved to a new town for work. I'm not really the kind of guy who makes friends easily. I'm a little quiet, a little careful, the kind of person who doesn't rush into things. But I figured a fresh start wouldn't hurt. New job, new place, maybe even a new life. The town I moved to wasn't huge, just a regular American town with tree-lined streets, cozy diners, a couple of gas stations, and a gym where everyone seemed to know everyone. I rented a small apartment near the edge of town and started settling in. Life was simple, even a little boring at times, but I didn't mind. After everything I'd been through the past few years, boring sounded pretty good. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by a gas station to grab a coffee and fill up my truck. That's when I met Derek. It was stupid, really. He couldn't get the pump to work, and I gave him a hand. One thing led to another, and we ended up chatting about truck sports and small-town life. Derek was 24, easygoing, the kind of guy who could probably make friends with a brick wall if he tried. He had that casual confidence that made you relax around him. After that, we ran into each other a few more times at the gym, at the grocery store, just around town, and each time it felt a little easier to talk. I wasn't exactly looking for new friends, but Derek made it hard to stay distant. He was just genuine, no drama, no weird vibes, just a good guy who liked talking about football, fishing, and weekend plans. One Thursday evening, after another quick chat outside the gym, he said, "Hey man, we're doing a little thing at my place this Saturday. Nothing fancy, just some burgers, beers, a couple of friends hanging out. You should come." I hesitated for a second. You know how it is when you're still new somewhere? You don't want to be the weird outsider crashing someone's family thing. But Derek just grinned and added, "Seriously, dude, it's no big deal. Just a backyard barbecue. Bring yourself and maybe an appetite." And honestly, after a few quiet weekends alone, it sounded good, real good. I smiled and said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be there." Saturday rolled around quicker than I thought. The weather was perfect, clear skies, a slight breeze, just warm enough to enjoy being outside without sweating through your shirt. I threw on a pair of jeans and a plain t-shirt, grabbed a six-pack of beer to bring along because you never show up empty-handed, right? And drove over to Derek's place. He lived in one of those typical suburban houses, white siding, neat little porch, a big oak tree in the front yard. As I pulled up, I could already hear music playing softly from the backyard and smell the unmistakable scent of something delicious cooking on the grill. I knocked once out of habit before letting myself around the side gate into the backyard. Derek spotted me right away and waved. "Alex, you made it, bro," he shouted, flipping a burger on the grill. I smiled and held up the six-pack. "Brought some reinforcements." He laughed. "You're going to fit in just fine." There were a few people already milling around, a couple of Derek's friends, neighbors, some girls I didn't know. Everyone looked relaxed, holding beers, laughing, telling stories. It felt easy. I hadn't felt that in a long time. Derek motioned for me to come closer. "Hey, I want you to meet someone," he said. I followed him toward the back door where a woman was stepping out onto the patio, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She looked casual, denim shorts, a loose white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even from a distance, she had a kind of effortless beauty about her, confident but warm. Derek grinned proudly. "This is my mom. Mom, this is Alex, the guy I was telling you about." I opened my mouth to say something polite. "Nice to meet you," all that stuff, but then she turned fully toward me, and for a split second everything around me, the music, the chatter, the clinking of bottles just blurred out, because I knew her and she knew me. Our eyes locked, and I could see the shock flash across her face just for a moment before she quickly masked it with a smile. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just recognition. It wasn't the kind of, "Hey, I think we've seen each other before, look." No, it was the deep, undeniable acknowledgement of two people who had shared something real, something secret, something that wasn't supposed to follow them here. She stepped forward, recovering faster than I did, and held out her hand. "Hi, Alex. It's nice to finally meet you," she said smoothly. Finally. The word hit harder than it should have. I took her hand, and for a brief second, the past rushed back between us, a storm of memories packed into a single silent handshake. I forced a polite smile and said, "Nice to meet you too, ma'am." The world around us snapped back into focus. Derek chatting about the grills, people laughing, music drifting in the background. But in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach flip. This wasn't our first meeting, not even close. And from the way she subtly avoided my gaze after that, I knew she remembered every single second of it too. The rest of the backyard buzzed with live music playing, low people laughing, Derek flipping burgers at the grill. But standing there on the patio, it felt like I was the only one frozen in time. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't prepared for this, not even close. Derek's mom recovered quickly. Her handshake was firm, her smile almost effortless almost. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think everything was perfectly normal. But I knew better. I caught the tiniest hesitation before she spoke, the way her hand lingered just a second longer than necessary in mine, and how her eyes, those deep, familiar eyes, darted away from me just a little too fast. I pulled myself together and tried to match her energy, pretend smile blend in. "So how do you know Derek?" she asked, her voice light. "We met at the gym and then just around town I said careful to keep it casual." I realized my voice sounded a little tighter than normal. I hope no one else noticed. She nodded and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I remembered well. It was the same thing she did that night we first met at the bar when she laughed at my stupid jokes over a cheap beer and the jukebox played some old rock song no one cared about anymore. Before I could say anything else, Derek clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, bro. You gotta try one of these burgers. Mom makes the best seasoning for 'em." I nodded quickly, thankful for the anything to break the tension before it became too obvious. We moved toward the grill, and I tried to act normal, talked about the weather, asked questions about the town, laughed at a couple of jokes. But every so often, I'd catch her out of the corner of my eye, moving through the backyard, handing out plates, refilling drinks, chatting with the guests. And every single time, my stomach twisted into a knot. She was careful, never lingered too close, never gave even the smallest sign that anything was out of place. If someone had snapped a picture, right then it would have looked perfect, a happy backyard gathering a friendly get-together. But under the surface, it was anything but simple. At one point, when Derek disappeared inside to grab more buns, she approached me again. For a second, we stood side by side at the cooler, pretending to look for drinks. "You okay?" she asked under her breath, barely moving her lips. I nodded stiffly, not trusting myself to say much. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured. "No kidding," I muttered, forcing a smile as I pulled out a bottle of water and cracked it open. "We need to be careful." I know she said, her voice barely audible over the music. And just like that, she turned and walked away, laughing at something one of the neighbors said, like she didn't have a secret burning in her chest. The rest of the evening blurred. We ate, we talked, someone brought out a football, and a few of the guys tossed it around. It was normal, so painfully normal that I almost convinced myself it had never happened, that we had never happened. But it did, and we both knew it. When the sun started to dip below the horizon and the backyard lights flickered on, people began to leave. I said goodbye to a few folks, shook Derek's hand, thanked him for the food. "You coming by the gym tomorrow?" he asked. "Yeah, I'll be there," I said. "Cool, man. Glad you came. Mom likes you too," he added with a grin. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, your mom's great." As I was about to leave, she came up behind Derek, drying her hands on a towel. "Thanks for coming." "Alex," she said warmly, her eyes locking on mine for just a fraction of a second too long. "Yeah," I said, feeling my throat tighten. "Thanks for having me." I walked back to my truck slowly, the weight of the evening pressing down on me harder with every step. When I got in and closed the door, I sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house. How the hell did this happen? I had no idea what to do next. Ignore it, pretend it never happened. Avoid Derek, avoid her. But the truth was there was no avoiding it now. Some lines once crossed don't just disappear. And as much as I wanted to convince myself that this was just an awkward coincidence deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger mess. I started the truck, backed out of the driveway, and drove home through the quiet, dark streets, my mind racing with 1,000 memories I thought I had left behind. The past wasn't just a memory anymore. It had a face, a name, a house, and now it had a secret that could destroy everything. I didn't sleep much that night. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every look, every word from that backyard barbecue. But no matter how much I tried to stay in the present, my thoughts kept pulling me back to where it all started, to the night I first met her. It had been about 4 months ago. I was in a great place then. I had just gone through a rough breakup, switched jobs, and moved halfway across the state. One night, feeling restless and tired of sitting alone in my apartment, I decided to hit a bar a few towns over. Somewhere nobody knew me, somewhere I could just disappear for a while. It wasn't anything fancy, one of those dim, slightly run-down places with neon beer signs and a jukebox playing old rock songs. The kind of bar where the stools wobble and the bartenders know the regulars by name. I sat at the far end of the bar, nursing a beer, half listening to a game playing on the old TV above the counter. That's when I noticed her. She was sitting a few seats down, flipping through something on her phone, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She didn't look like she belonged there. She looked out of place, but not uncomfortable, like she needed to be anywhere but home. Our eyes met briefly when she looked up. I gave a polite nod, the kind you give strangers when you accidentally make eye contact. A few minutes later, she moved closer, sitting a seat away from me. She smiled, a soft, almost sad smile, and said, "Busy night, huh?" The bar was half empty. I laughed a little. Yeah, crazy crowd. That broke the ice. We started talking small stuff at first, weather, sports, places to eat around town. Nothing serious, nothing personal, but it was easy, natural, the kind of conversation you don't have to force. Her name was Claire, at least that's what she told me that night. We didn't talk about families or kids or exes or real life stuff. It was like we were both pretending to be different people for a while. Two lost souls looking for something, maybe comfort, maybe escape. The drinks flowed a little more freely after that. We laughed, we joked, we leaned in closer without even realizing it. At one point, when she laughed at something dumb, I said she lightly touched my arm. It was nothing, just a casual gesture, but it felt electric. The night blurred after that, not from alcohol, I hadn't had that much, but from the adrenaline, the rush of feeling connected to someone when you least expect it. When we finally left the bar, it wasn't some big dramatic thing. We didn't stumble out drunk or trip over ourselves. We just walked out together into the cool night air, standing awkwardly near our cars. I remember the way she looked at me, head tilted slightly, a small, hesitant smile playing at her lips. "Well," she said softly, "thanks for the company tonight." I didn't want it to end, and apparently neither did she. There was a long pause, and then, without really thinking, I leaned in. She met me halfway. It wasn't wild or messy, it was slow, tender, the kind of kiss that feels both new and familiar at the same time. After that, things moved fast. She suggested we go somewhere more private, not her place, not mine, somewhere neutral, a motel just off the highway. It sounds bad when you say it out loud, cheap, reckless, but it didn't feel that way then. It felt inevitable. We spent the night together, no promises, no talk about the future, just two people trying to forget the rest of the world for a little while. I remember lying there afterwards, staring at the cracked ceiling of the motel room, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. We stayed until just after dawn. She kissed me softly on the shoulder, whispered, "Take care," and left before I even had the chance to ask for her number. And that was it, or so I thought. I didn't know her last name. I didn't know where she lived. I didn't even know if I'd ever see her again. For a while, I tried to convince myself it was better that way. A clean break, no complications. I even tried to forget her, tried. But every now and then she would drift back into my mind, the sound of her laugh, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. When she smiled, the feel of her hand resting lightly on my chest. I didn't realize just how deeply she had gotten under my skin until I saw her again standing there on that backyard patio, wearing a different smile, playing a different role, Derek's mom, Claire. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. Was it fate, stupidity? Some sick cosmic joke? I don't know. All I knew in that moment was that pretending we didn't know each other would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. Because the truth was, I didn't just remember her, I missed her. The next few days were a blur of routine work gym errands. But no matter how much I tried to keep myself busy, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Claire, Derek's mom, the woman I had shared something real with long before I even knew her son existed. Every time my phone buzzes with a text from Derek about hitting the gym or grabbing a coffee, I felt a small knot tighten in my chest. He had no idea, no clue about the night his mom and I had met, the connection we had, the way we had lost ourselves in each other for a few stolen hours. And that's how it had to stay. I made up my mind I wasn't going to screw this up. Derek was a good guy. He didn't deserve to have his trust broken because of a mistake neither of us saw coming. Claire and I were adults. We knew better. We could pretend we had to. The next weekend, Derek invited me over again. Low-key, he promised just a few people, some beer, maybe a game on the TV. I almost said no. Every instinct in me screamed to avoid the situation. Stay away, keep my distance, let the past stay buried. But I also knew that saying no would look suspicious, and more than that, a part of me wanted to see her again. I showed up late, hoping that by the time I got there, the crowd would be thick enough to blend into. Derek greeted me at the door with a grin and a beer. Inside, the house was filled with the comfortable noise of a gathering, people chatting in the kitchen, laughing in the living room, the sound of a football game playing somewhere in the background. And then I saw her. Claire was standing near the kitchen counter talking to one of Derek's neighbors, a glass of wine in her hand. She caught sight of me almost immediately, her expression tightening for just a heartbeat before smoothing out into something casual. We didn't speak, not at first. We moved around each other carefully, like two magnets forced to repel. If Derek noticed anything off, he didn't say. At one point, while I was grabbing another drink, Claire brushed past me close enough that I could smell the soft, clean scent of her perfume. She didn't say anything, didn't even look at me, but her hand lightly brushed my wrist so fast, so subtle, it could have been accidental. It wasn't. Later that evening, after most people had drifted outside to the backyard, I found myself alone in the kitchen, rinsing out a cup at the sink. Claire came in behind me. Neither of us said anything at first. She leaned against the counter, arm crossed, watching me. The air between us was thick, heavier than it should have been for two people who were supposed to be strangers. Finally, she spoke, her voice low. "We need to be careful." I turned off the tap and set the cup down, not looking at her. "I know," I said. "This can't happen again," she said, her tone firm, almost pleading. I nodded. Of course, but the truth was, it was already happening. It was happening in the way we moved around each other, in the tension that pulsed just under the surface, in the way my heart raced just standing near her. "This is Derek's life," she added quietly, "his home, his trust." "I get it, Claire," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "I'm not going to mess this up." For a moment, she just looked at me, and I saw the same sadness there that I had seen that night in the bar. The same loneliness. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else. But then Derek's voice echoed from the backyard. "Mom, Alex, come out here. We're starting the fire pit." Claire straightened instantly, smoothing her hands down her jeans. She forced a smile. "Coming," she called out brightly. Without another word, she slipped past me and headed outside, leaving me standing there, gripping the edge of the sink, trying to catch my breath. The rest of the evening was a test of endurance. I laughed when I was supposed to. I answered questions. I tossed a football around half-heartedly when Derek asked, but the whole time I could feel her presence just out of reach, but never out of mine. Every glance, every smile, every casual touch, when we passed too close, it was all an act, a fragile, delicate act, and it had to be perfect. When the night wound down and people started saying their goodbyes, Claire stayed mostly in the background, cleaning up dishes, stacking plastic cups. I went to say goodbye, keeping my tone light. Thanks again for having me, I said loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. She smiled warmly. Anytime, Alex, you're always welcome here. It was a simple exchange, innocent, exactly what it needed to be. But as I turned to leave, I caught the slightest flicker in her eyes, a glimmer of something she couldn't quite hide, regret, longing, maybe even sadness. And just like that, I knew pretending nothing happened was going to be harder than either of us thought. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, trying to figure out how the hell I got into this mess. A few months ago, Claire was just a beautiful stranger I met in a bar now. She was Derek's mom, and I was pretending we were strangers faking smiles while a hurricane of memories spun between us. The guilt weighed heavier with every passing day, not because of what had happened. That night in the motel wasn't a mistake. We were two lonely people looking for something real, even if only for a night. The guilt came from the secret itself, from knowing that if Derek ever found out, it would wreck him and wreck whatever friendship we were starting to build. I needed closure, not for me, not for Claire, for the sake of what was left of normalcy. That afternoon, I got a text from Claire. Can you meet me? No address, no explanation, just that. Part of me wanted to ignore it, pretend the whole thing never happened, move on. But another part of me, the part that couldn't forget the way she smiled at me that night in the bar, the way she looked away from me in the backyard, knew I had to go. We met at a quiet park just outside of town, a place where no one would recognize us, where we could talk without the walls listening. Claire was already there when I arrived, sitting at a weathered picnic table under a huge oak tree. She looked tired, beautiful but tired. I walked over slowly, hands stuffed in my jacket pockets. Hey, I said quietly. She looked up, offering a weak smile. Hey. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The sounds of the town cars, birds, kids playing somewhere far off filled the silence. Finally, she spoke. I needed to see you one more time to say things clearly. I nodded and sat down across from her. We have to bury this, she said, her voice steady. No glances, no slip-ups, no memories, not around Derek, not around anyone. I swallowed hard. I know, I care about him more than anything in this world, she continued. And you're a good person, Alex. You didn't know, neither did I. But if we slip, even a little, she shook her head, it would destroy him. I felt something twist deep inside my chest. She wasn't wrong, and hearing her say it made it feel final, permanent. We'll act like we're strangers, I said flat final. She nodded, exactly like it never happened. But it did. We both knew it, and no amount of pretending could erase the past. Still, for Derek's sake, for all our sakes, it had to be done. Claire reached into her purse and pulled out a small piece of paper. She slid it across the table toward me. I picked it up. It was a receipt from the bar where we first met, the date circled in pen. I kept it, she said softly. At first, I don't know, as a reminder that I was still alive, that I could feel something again. I stared at it for a moment, then folded it carefully and slid it into my pocket. Thank you, I said. She smiled sadly. Goodbye, Alex. Goodbye, Claire. She stood up, hesitated for half a second, like she wanted to say more or maybe even hug me, but then just turned and walked away, leaving me sitting there under the oak tree with nothing but memories. I watched her go until she disappeared down the path. And just like that, the chapter closed. There were no promises, no second chances, just a silent agreement. We would lock this secret away forever. After that day, things between me and Derek continued as if nothing had ever happened. We hit the gym, grabbed beers after work, talked about sports, movies, life. Every now and then I'd see Claire at his house, waving from the kitchen window or stepping onto the porch to say hello when I dropped by. Always polite, always distant, we never spoke of it again. Sometimes late at night I think about that night at the bar, about what could have been if life hadn't twisted the way it did. but those thoughts stayed where they belonged in the past. Because some secrets, some moments aren't meant to be anything more than a memory. And that's all Claire and I would ever be, a memory, sealed, protected, and never to be spoken of. The story of Alex and Claire delivers a deeply emotional life lesson about the weight of secrets and the strength required to prioritize trust over personal desires. Their chance encounter at a bar, followed by an unexpected reunion, as Derek's friend and mother underscores how past connections can resurface in ways that challenge our integrity. Alex's struggle to suppress his feelings for Claire, despite their undeniable chemistry, teaches us that sometimes the most honorable choice is to protect those we care about, even at the cost of our own longing. Claire's resolve to bury their shared history for her son's sake highlights the selfless love of a parent, while their mutual decision to maintain a facade of strangers reveals the power of discipline in preserving relationships. This narrative reminds us that life's fleeting moments of connection, though profound, must sometimes remain locked away to avoid causing pain. It's a heartfelt call to weigh the consequences of our actions, cherish memories without letting them disrupt the present, and find peace in doing what's right even when it hurts. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to keep a secret to protect someone you care about? Your stories deepen our community's connection. If this tale touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to join our journey of raw emotional storytelling. Let's keep exploring life's complex lessons together.